Everybody, welcome. I'm going to start by introducing you to who I am with a few slides that kind of outline my life. That top left slide is a picture of the town I grew up in. That's Main Street of Sheboygan, Michigan. When I was 17, I got on an airplane and went to the military academy at West Point, New York, and I was there for 4 years. After that, I was a field artillery officer in the 101st Airborne Division for 3 years. I was stationed in Germany for 3 years after that. After about 11 years of active duty, I went into the reserves, and for a long period, I was able to teach ROTC cadets, primarily at the University of Michigan, but also at Eastern Michigan University. During that time, I was deployed to Kosovo and Iraq, and now I work here at Eastern Michigan University. My whole life, I have been around the military and universities. Those are two topics I know quite a bit about. And also during my whole life, I've had people working for me of all ages, but mainly quite young people. And I've seen different characteristics in them that the successful ones always seem to have. And that's what I wanted to start with, is explaining a few of those to you. But before I explain what makes people successful, I want to talk about what success is. If you look at that picture on the left, many people in society will tell you successful people are powerful, rich, have a lot of influence. And the reason we say that is because it's easy to measure success in money. If you make $10 an hour and George makes 12, often we will say George is more successful because he makes more money. And we use money because it is so easy. It's also wrong, in my opinion. If you look at the person on the right, I'm sure if she's working for the Red Cross, she does not make a lot of money, but I would say she is probably very successful because I measure success differently. In my mind, success means that you're doing something that you feel makes a contribution and is fulfilling. And if I ask that lady at the end of her workday, did you do something useful today? She would probably say, yes, absolutely I did. And I would call her a huge success. And that the sense of fulfillment you get is going to depend on your job. And that's going to be different for everybody. One person might say, for me, it's being an engineer. The next person might say, for me, I get that fulfillment from being a mechanic. The next person might say it's nursing. It doesn't really matter. It's just that it fits you, what you get your sense of fulfillment out of. Don't worry about the money. Look for that way that you can make a contribution. And that is one of the things I want you to keep in mind when we say success, is I'm not measuring that in dollar bills. Now, for attributes I generally see in successful people. I'm trying to get my slide to advance here. Oh, there we go. The first one is, one thing I know successful people have in common from my perspective is that they're doing something they enjoy. This picture you see is, he's a Navy fighter pilot. And I assume he enjoys his job. He enjoys studying the flight characteristics of a fighter plane. He's okay with the risk. Me personally, I wouldn't touch his job with a 10-foot pole. There's nothing about it that I would find particularly enjoyable. And here's why that matters so much. If you happened to be in battle and you needed air support, would you rather have me in that airplane or this guy? Probably somebody that is really into it. And the reason is, you're just going to be better that way. If you're doing a job that you're not really into, you will never really excel at it. So that's the first thing you should look for, is do something you enjoy. Another attribute I see in just about all really successful people is initiative. This is Brian. He was one of my cadets when I taught ROTC at University of Michigan. When he was a senior, we were doing a field training exercise, and we started by doing tactics training, and then I had to move everybody to another training site to do land navigation. And I had 3 vans to move about 80 people with, and it's always a kind of a cluster to do that. And when I got out of the woods with my squad to the field that we were supposed to form up in, there was nobody there, and the vans were gone. All I saw out there was Brian, and I was already steaming mad because the plan wasn't going according to how I thought it would go. And I went up to Brian and I said, "Where is everybody at?" And Brian said, "As soon as they got out of the woods, I started moving them to the land nav course. And don't worry, because I know exactly where everybody's at. I have perfect accountability." And I was amazed. I thought one of my fellow cadre instructors got the ball rolling without me telling them to do that. And it was a huge relief for me not to have to do that. That it had already got going. And I asked Brian, I said, "Who told you to do that?" And Brian said, "Nobody told me to do it. I knew it needed to happen, so I made it happen." I was dumbfounded. I pointed at him and I said, you already have what it takes to be an excellent officer. Good work." The problem with taking initiative, and the reason why many people don't like to do it, is it can backfire. Courtney Pierce, the one you see on the left in this picture, took initiative one morning. When we were doing our workout, she decided to take her squad to the pool and do a water workout. Well, the lady who runs the pool didn't like that because it was disruptive to the other swimmers. So she went and found our colonel and said, "Quit sending your people to the pool without talking to me first." And the colonel went and found Courtney and ripped her apart for that. And I found Courtney after, and I said, "Your initiative is excellent." And Courtney said, "The colonel didn't think so." And I said, "Don't worry about the colonel. I am your teacher. You keep doing what you're doing. Take initiative. If you see an opportunity, take it." So yes, sometimes this idea of initiative will backfire. But here's a picture of Courtney. She's an Army nurse. This is a picture of her in Germany. Her risks look like they paid off to me. And I would encourage all of you to do that. If you see something that you know needs to get done, just sink your teeth into it and do it. Another thing I see very often in successful people is high energy. One summer when I was at ROTC Advanced Camp, it's a cadet leadership camp, I was one of the evaluators for the cadets. And this isn't an actual picture of the young lady I was evaluating that day, but she looked very much like this girl on the left of this picture. She was the executive officer for a cadet company, and that it's about 160 people, and she was responsible for making sure everything flowed smoothly throughout the whole day. And from those other pictures, you can see that there's quite a bit that happens in the course of a day there. It's a lot of work trying to make sure everybody's in the right uniform at the right place at the right time. And she was responsible for that all day long. I would check on her, and every time I watched what she was doing, she was either doing it inefficiently or bungling all day long. And at the end of the day, when I was counseling her, I gave her a long list of things that she messed up. And I gave her an evaluation that said excellent, which is the highest grade I can give anybody. The reason is because every time I did check on her, she was doing something. She put her heart into that job all day long and did it just absolutely nonstop. That's one of the things. That high energy is something that I can't teach. That kind of commitment, I have a hard time teaching. It's very easy for me to teach somebody to be effective. So if I had another month or two with her, if she was one of my lieutenants, I could teach her all that easy stuff about how to be efficient and effective. And when you mix that with the kind of a drive that she had the potential to be an exceptional officer. And that's why I gave her that very high rating. This is Thea Williams. Thea, well, what I'm talking about here is fear. Thea hates the water and she hates heights. She is absolutely afraid of heights and water. And there was an event at advanced camp where you climb up a 40-foot tower, grab onto a steel bar that's hooked onto pulleys, that's hooked onto a steel cable. The steel cable runs across a lake. And you're supposed to slide down this cable, just hanging onto the bar with your hands, let go before you get completely to the other side, fall in the water and swim to shore. It's called the slide for life. Thea went up there and she refused to do it. And I heard this over the radio at the end of the day that the guy in charge of that training site said, we had one cadet that refused to do this. And they said her name and I thought, oh my gosh, she's one of my cadets. And they will kick you out of ROTC for refusing to do that. So I went and had a chat with her that night, tried to motivate her a little bit and give her some confidence. They were going to give her a chance to do that the next morning. And I was fairly close to that training site. And I thought, well, I'll walk down there and see if I can give her a pat on the back or something and get her to do this. And I was walking to that training site. It was really early in the morning. It was dead silent, walking through really tall, majestic pine trees. And I heard a scream, an ear-piercing scream echoing through the treetops. And I heard those pulleys whining against the steel cable. And I thought, holy cow, she did it. She screamed all the way down. I went to the lake and watched her and she let go in time and she fell in the lake. And then she tried paddling to shore, yelling, help, help, help the whole time. She yelled help until she was 3 feet from the shore. And I stepped in the water and grabbed her by the collar and stood her up and showed her she was in only a foot of water so she could stop panicking. But the point is that she did it. With fear, I have been afraid at least 100 times. Everybody is afraid. You have absolutely no choice. It's going to come your way. If it hasn't hit you yet, it will at some point in your life, probably multiple times. You have no choice. Your choice lies in whether you let fear stop you or not. And that was one of the reasons I was so proud of Thea, is as afraid as she was, she didn't let fear stop her. Another attribute is that I like to see is people who refuse to quit. These two young ladies are nurses now. They're both Army nurses. This is a picture of them when they were students at University of Michigan. The one on the left, her name is Brooke. When she was a freshman, just right out of high school, it was her first month at University of Michigan, and she was in ROTC and in the nursing school. She decided to join the ROTC Ranger Challenge team, which is, it requires a lot of physical work. It's a very difficult team to be a part of. I honestly didn't think she was up to it because most new freshmen right out of high school aren't, but she wanted to do it. And we said, okay, go for it. About a month into that, we did our first road march. It was several miles and we wore packs on our back. That's usually quite hard for the freshmen because they're just not used to it. But Brooke made it the whole way. And I was pretty impressed just with that. But afterwards, I was in the cadet lounge and Brooke and Autumn were both in there. And when I walked in, Autumn said, look at her. And Brooke was sitting in a chair with her boots off. And I looked at her and I said, okay, so what? And Autumn says she has a blister. Well, blisters are very normal when you're new to ruck marching. And again, I said, so what? And Autumn said, she bled through her boot. And I said, no, she didn't. That's impossible. Nobody bleeds through a leather boot. And Autumn picked up her boot and showed it to me. And there was blood on the outside of it. That had to have been extremely painful. Most people would have stopped and said, hey, I got a problem long before that happened. And I looked at Brooke and I said, why did you keep going to finish this march? And she said, I didn't want to quit. And right then I knew she was going to make it through U of M. She was going to make it through the nursing school, and she was going to become a lieutenant, because she is built from that material of, I am not going to quit. And she did. She made it through all of that. Another attribute, this is a little bit more rare. It's not, I don't see it in everybody, but in the real top performers, I see it. This guy, Jordan, that you see in the middle of this picture, this is a picture from when he was a lieutenant. And I don't remember if he was in Afghanistan or Iraq at this point, but this is an infantry platoon that he was in charge of. When he was a cadet, when he was new to ROTC, he said his goal was to be the fastest, the strongest, and the guy with all the medals. That was his goal in the military. And at the end of his first year, he said, none of that matters. None of that mattered to him at all anymore. The only thing that really mattered to him was that the people under him were the fastest and the strongest and the best. And he said the only reason for him to be the fastest is so he could teach the people under him to be even faster. The only reason for him to be the strongest is so he could set an example and help elevate the people he was in charge of. Leaders like that are pretty rare, but they're also very special. I had another cadet one time, it's not the same topic, but he was getting ready to go to advanced camp. And cadets typically get 2 ratings there. One is a satisfactory for an S, and the other one is an E for excellent. And this guy, I had him in my office before he went to camp, and I said, I think you're going to get an S at camp. I think you might as well go there with an S stamped on your forehead. And he said, why is that? And I said, well, you're a very competent, but I've known a lot of cadets before, and I kind of know the difference between which ones get the excellent rating and which ones get the satisfactory rating. And I just think it is my belief and my instinct that you're going to get an S. So if you don't get an E, don't get disappointed in that. Just kind of expect that. So I was at camp that summer, and at the end of his camp, I saw him walking down the street, and I said, how did it go? And he said, I got an E. And I said, how did you even do that? How did you get an E? And he said, well, when I got here, I figured I was going to get an S because that's what you told me would happen. So rather than worry about my own evaluation, I spent all my time just focusing on helping everybody else get an E. Well, the cadre that were in charge of his platoon looked at that guy spending all his time trying to elevate the people around him. And they said, this is excellent. This is what we want. And he got an E for that. Now, there are some things on this list of attributes that make people successful. Well, there are some things I didn't put on that list. And I didn't put them on there because they're not important. You do not need to have a cashmere suit, Bruno Magli shoes, a fast car. You don't need to be good looking. You don't need to come from a wealthy family. You don't need a lot of TikTok followers. You don't need to be popular on YouTube. You don't even need to be particularly smart. Actually, most of the people that work for me are just normal smart. None of what you see in this picture matters to me at all. So if you see people like this and you think, wow, they got it going on, you are incorrect. There's more to success than getting a start in life like you see here. This is an example of the people I really value. This guy, his name is John. He's a student here at EMU. I met him a couple times. He is also in the Michigan National Guard. That's how he pays for school. But I met him a couple times and he was very energetic and very focused. And that's why one day I said, John, I'm prepared to offer you $11 an hour to work for me. And he said, I'm prepared to accept it. One of the interesting things about John is I was talking to him one day and I said, were you afraid to go into the National Guard? And he said, no, I kind of prepared for it. I was ready and I wanted to do it, to go to basic training. And he said, but school scared me. He said, I was very nervous about coming to college. I thought that was kind of odd. And I said, why? And he said, because I didn't think I was smart enough for it. And I said, well, then how do you explain in your first semester here, you got straight A's? And he said, because I go to my room every night and I just study, I just work. And that's how he gets his A's. But he's got those other attributes that I like seeing in people. He does take initiative. He does not let fear stop him. If he did, he never would have came to EMU. But you can see that he's not particularly good looking. He doesn't come from a rich family. He doesn't have a car. He doesn't have the best iPhone. He's just high energy, focused and committed. And that's why he is a piece of gold to me. And that's why I wanted him on my team here. There are a few things that I've seen that get in the way of people's success. This lady on the left in this picture that says she hates biology. I actually met a student like that one time. She hated biology. She wanted nothing to do with research. And at the same time, she told me she wanted to be a doctor. And I didn't tell her this, but I thought, if you hate biology, you are never going to become a doctor because doctors like that stuff. The lady you see in the black mask is a doctor. She was also one of my students years ago. She's a major in the Army and an Army doctor. She will be the first one to tell you that biology is hard. She found it very difficult. When she was in med school, I used to touch base with her from time to time, and she said, this is the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. But the difference is she liked it. She liked biology, even though she thought it was very, very difficult. So what I'm saying is, if you're in a career field that you hate, you are probably not going to get through it. If you are in a career field that you like, even if you find it very, very difficult, you're probably going to make it. And that makes all the difference, is if you're into it or not. This picture kind of speaks for itself. This gets in the way of success all the time. It just does not work. And if your lifestyle contains too much of this, you're probably truly limiting yourself and limiting your potential. One of the other things that I think get in the way of good performance and success is low self-esteem. If you have low self-esteem, it's very difficult to operate at your best level. And I want to talk about that for a second, because I struggled with that for a long time. And when I was young, I based my self-esteem off of two things. And I think they're pretty common. One of those things was, what do other people think of me? And the other one was, how do I compare to the next guy? How do I do when I'm compared to the next guy? It was not until I got into my 30s that I thought, this is absurd. I have no control over those two things. I have zero control over what other people think of me. Other people control that completely. I have zero control over how I perform compared to the next guy, because the next guy is going to be a different person on Tuesday than on Wednesday. And the person next to you is going to have good days and bad days. So it's useless to try and compare yourself to something you have no control over. Now, this didn't happen to me overnight. It took a whole lot of self-reflection, but I finally was able to turn the tables on how I perceive myself and where my self-esteem comes from. I don't concern myself at all anymore with what other people think of me. What I do concern myself with is how I treat other people. I am in complete control of that. So anybody I meet through the day, the first thing I do is look for the good in them. I treat them either as an equal, or very often I think this person might even be better than I am. And I keep that in mind. I hold the door for people. I help when I can. And if I do all those things to the people that I meet through the course of my day, if I treat them as well as I possibly can, I go home at night and say, okay, Wayne, you did okay today. Good work. As far as comparing myself to other people, I never do that anymore either. I compare myself only to me and the person I was a week ago or a month ago. And if I compare my performance today with what I did a month ago and I'm better at it, then I'll say, okay, you're on track. Keep going. I can always beat myself. Sometimes if I have a good day, the next day is going to take an awful big effort to beat myself, but I can always do that. And as long as I'm doing that, I feel good that I'm on the right track. And now with the people around me, if I outperform someone else, that is not an opportunity for me to rub their face in it. It is an opportunity for me to help elevate them and make them better. What I really like is being surrounded by people that are better than I am, because it's just an opportunity that's rich with learning and helps me improve myself. But once I finally sunk that into my head, my self-esteem is never particularly high, but it's, I guess we could say, a good medium esteem that I carry with me all the time. And that helps me perform at a high level and humble enough that I know I need to keep trying. This guy, Kevin Hart, I really don't know too much about him at all. But when I read this quote, I agree with it 100%. Your hard work is going to pay off. But it's not going to pay off by 5 o'clock tonight. It is a lifestyle. Hard work is a lifestyle. Nobody is going to show up on your doorstep one day with a trophy and say, congratulations, today you have achieved success. It doesn't work that way. Hard work and the success that follows is a lifestyle, and it will pay off. It just takes sometimes an awful long time. But once you get there, it's worth it. And once you get there, if that is your lifestyle, the hard work, you won't stop doing it. You will just keep doing it forever because you enjoy it. Here's an example of where hard work can get you. This guy, Mike, he's the one on the right in that picture. He was one of my students at University of Michigan. He studied engineering. Then he went into the Army. He was a lieutenant in the infantry. And then he got out and he started to work for SpaceX, and he just loves it. He loves being a part of rocket launches. He thinks that's the coolest thing. I think a lot of people would think that's pretty cool. You can launch rockets. That was not easy for him. It took years of very hard work, but it led him to a place that he really wants to be. The astronaut, you see the man that's on the rightmost male you see in this picture. I know him. He was a cadet at West Point. He lived next door to me. His name was, is Doug Wheelock. Back then, when I knew him, he was 21 years old, and he wanted to be an astronaut. Along the way, he did all the right things. He's majored in aerospace engineering. He went into the Army infantry and then transferred into Army aviation. And his whole life everything he did was aimed at becoming an astronaut. And he ended up spending 6 months of his life in outer space. That did not come overnight. That was years of very, very hard work, but he wanted it.
Wayne, how do you feel about us getting the polls going? It's about that time that you suggested.
This is a good time for that.
Perfect. So to our attendees, if a university education were available to you, would you would you attend? So I'll just give a few moments for you all to answer.
Oh, that's what I like to see. So far, it says 100%.
All right, perfect. So we had 100% say definitely. Can share that. And would you like me to proceed with the next one, Wayne?
Sure.
Okay. How willing are you to take risks and do things that you are not familiar with? We have a little mix of willing and maybe, it looks like.
That's still spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
I lived my whole life as I would have said maybe. And I've taken a lot of risks, but I'm still always a maybe. So that's awesome too. Okay. Shall I keep going?
Sounds good.
All right. This is Lisa. She has a higher rank than I ever achieved. At one point, I outranked her, but it looks like she outworked me and overachieved. But again, she's an example of a lot of hard work. This is Anthony Webster. He is one of my colleagues here at Eastern Michigan University. And I would like you to capture his email address and name, and I'll show it again in my last slide. One of the things I like about Anthony is he grew up dirt poor. He got dropped off on a college campus, had no money and no idea what he was doing. Now he has the same type of job I have here at Eastern Michigan University, very successful, and he's working on his PhD. If you think college is impossible because you don't have money and your family doesn't have money, talk to Anthony and say, hey, this dude named Doyle told me college is possible if you're broke. Is that true? He can tell you exactly how it works. But he got here through a lot of dedication and a lot of hard work. He's another example of hard work pays off eventually. Now I'm going to talk about the military for a minute. Travis, this guy on the left, he was in the Navy for 4 years. He got out of the Navy and came to Eastern Michigan University and used what is called the post 9/11 GI Bill. That GI Bill pays 100% of your tuition. And while you're in school, it also provides you with $2,000 a month that go right into your wallet that you can live off of. So he graduated from college with no debt and 4 years of experience in the Navy. The guy you see all the way on the right is Rashid. He went to college right out of high school, but he was also in the National Guard. So he had some means of paying for college as he went through. He finished his bachelor's degree, then he finished his master's degree, and now he is working on a PhD already. But my point with this slide is to show you that the military can give you some pretty good education benefits. In fact, I'm going to just say they're excellent education benefits. These are examples of every person you see in this picture on this slide were students of mine, and every one of them was in the Army. And when you look at these, you'd think if you put the military together with college, it looks like what comes at the end isn't quite so bad. They all enjoy what they're doing. They all are doing very different things. I would say they are all successful because they are loving what they do. Now, you might be wondering if the military is such a good deal, Why doesn't everybody do it? Well, I'll tell you the answer to that. First of all, it is hard. Sometimes it is very dangerous. Almost always you're going to be away from home, perhaps in the middle of the ocean. You might find yourself doing weird things like walking out the back of a helicopter with a parachute on your back, hoping it opens. This steers a lot of people away because it is hard. And the worst news is, before you get to the hard stuff, you have to go through the really hard stuff. And many people will look at these these pictures are very accurate. And we do go through this stuff in the military, especially for the first 1 or 2 months. But some people will look at that and say, well, I don't want to get all full of mud. I don't want to carry around a log. It's definitely not impossible, but it is one of those things that people sometimes feel fear of. Of course, there are other people that are medically disqualified from military service, and there's just no possible way they can do it because they get screened out for different disabilities and that kind of thing. But if you meet the physical requirements, this stuff is not impossible. It does take a lot of hard work, but it's not impossible. I was talking with Amanda a couple of weeks ago, and she asked me she said, can you explain kind of a normal day in the military? And I sort of can explain kind of a normal day, but we have so many weird days, it's hard to pin down what normal actually is. But if there is such a thing as a normal day in the military, this is what it looks like. Typically, your day is going to start with a morning workout. And one of the cool things about the military is you don't have to be an athlete to get in, but you're going to be one coming out, because we do this stuff every day. Work out, and then it's pretty normal to go to the chow hall and get a pretty good plate of food. And then you're going to go to your job. If you're a mechanic, for example, you're probably going to go work on vehicles all day long. And then at night, you're going to hang out in your room or chill out with your friends. Now, the room you see this guy in, it's not typical. This is one of the upgraded Army rooms. I've seen many that are quite a bit worse than that, so I don't want to paint a picture that tells you a bad story. But this is what the Army is headed for. I think it's what the Air Force has been doing for several years. I think the Army is maybe a little bit behind, but the living conditions aren't bad, and they're getting better. And of course, sometimes we have fun. We have goofy lieutenants, colonels with a sense of humor. The guys you see in the top right are Marines. Of course, they're not smiling, because when the Marines goof off, they take their goofing off time very, very seriously. But the Army, the military in general, there are times when it is just the most fun you can ever have. So it's a good mix of fun and hard.
And then Wayne, I just wanted to let you know we have about 10 minutes before Q&A starts.
Perfect. That is absolutely perfect. This is Mike. Mike is a student here at Eastern Michigan University. And what I want to talk about with this slide is how does this military experience fit in with school? How does that work? And fit in with the profession you want to go with for the long term. Mike joined the Marine Corps after he got out of high school, and he was in a heavy construction unit, which is kind of like the pictures you see on the left of this screen. He came to Eastern Michigan University, and he's in the College of Business, which you see on the top left of this screen. Those are some of his fellow students and one of the professors over there. When Mike was here for about a year, I said, Mike, you need to find a business internship, because all you did in the Marine Corps is construction, and you need to start building this business experience. Well, Mike played it smart. He went and found a company that does construction. And he said, I'm a business student. I want a business internship. And by the way, I already know what your company does, because I did construction for 4 years. I know how everything you do works. And they said, wow, you might make a good intern. And they hired him for an internship. At the end of his first summer, they said, hey, why don't you come back next summer? And he did. Recently, they got a hold of Mike and said, Mike, we want you to work for us when you graduate. How much money are you going to need? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine a company coming to you and saying, we want you to work for us. How much money do you need? That is what putting military and college can do for you. It's just one example, but it turned out pretty cool for him. And this is the last thing I wanted to show you. It's just some resources. If you want to look into Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marines, there's a recruiting station on Washtenaw that has all 4 services there. And you can go in there and say, hey, can you guys tell me more about this? And I would check out all 4 of them. In fact, when I was in high school, I did, well, in my town, we only had Navy and Army, but I did look into both of them. I was quite sure I wanted to go to college, but I thought, these guys are here. I'm going to go talk to them and see what they have. I almost ended up in the Navy because they had some very intriguing possibilities. But then I got accepted to West Point, and I thought, well, maybe I'll do that instead. But it is worth chatting with them. If you do that for 4 years, you can get out and use the GI Bill to cover your full college. Anthony Webster, I introduced him to you a little while ago. If the military isn't your thing, but you don't have a big pile of money, talk to them. Say, hey, is it possible to go to college if you don't have a whole lot of money, and how does that work? If you might want to, you know, I mentioned a couple National Guard students, that goes a long way toward paying for college. So you would do National Guard basic training. That only takes about 1 summer, and then you're in the National Guard while you do college. And you could also go through ROTC at the same time and become an officer. If that sounds interesting to you, get a hold of Sergeant Vetter. And I told all of these guys I was going to give their names and numbers out. And they said, absolutely. If anybody wants to talk to us about any of this stuff, we're the experts. Have them give us a call or send us an email, and they are happy to talk to you more. And I am as well. So, Amanda, what do we got?
Well, we are welcoming all questions at this time. And then I also put in the chat for everybody some resources from Wayne, including the contact information provided, as well as Eastern Michigan University's webpage. And so I'll kick it off with one of my questions, if you don't mind, Wayne.
Sure.
So what is your favorite part of your job?
That's an easy question. I thought you were going to give me a hard one. Seeing students become successful. My goal, and this has happened before, every student that comes in here is a veteran, because I work with student veterans primarily. And I tell them my goal is for you, when you graduate, to walk into a job where you're making more money than I do. And I've seen that happen over and over. They take this military experience, add EMU to it, do the hard work in the meantime, and they just, I saw one kid, he got offered $95,000 a year, and he's 22 years old. And I thought, holy cow, this is awesome. It's days like that that make me feel really good. But that's what I like the most about my job, is to see that kind of success. Get into something that you think is a joy, and people actually pay you that much money to do it.
Absolutely. No, that's the dream.
Yep.
And then, did you always know that you wanted to pursue the military, or even your current role as student support?
No, not at all. When I was young, I wanted to be a civil engineer, because my family owned a company called Doyle Civil Engineering. They were basically land surveyors, but it was called civil engineering on the truck. And I just thought that's what Doyle's did, is they became civil engineers. I wasn't even really sure what a civil engineer was. I just figured that's what I had to do because I was a Doyle. Junior year in high school, I started looking at a book in what it was in one of my classrooms. It was a college book on West Point, and I thought, this is interesting. And I read that book probably 4 times. It was just a college book. And I thought, I'm going to try. I didn't think I'd get accepted, but I knew I wouldn't if I didn't try. And somehow they accepted me. And I was afraid of going into the Army. It was scary for me, but I thought, my uncles all did it, and my uncles were farmers. If they can do it, I can do it because I come from the same stock. And I did that, and it was fun. Parts of the Army I didn't like, and parts of it I just loved. And especially teaching ROTC was just a blast. I loved working with cadets. But the fact is, when I got into my 50s, working out with 20-year-old men and women, I couldn't do it anymore. It was just too hard for me to work out on their level and set a good example. And this job came open. I had no idea what this job was, but I thought, well, if I'm working with veterans, I know them. I'm working with college students, I know them. I could probably do this job. So I went for it, and it has been awesome. But no, when I was 17 years old, I couldn't have told you what my life was going to look like, but it turned out good. It did take a lot of work and overcoming some scary things, but yeah, I'm happy where I'm at, but I never predicted it.
That's fantastic. And thank you so much, Wayne. We do have another question from one of our attendees. So in your experience, what can colleges or universities do to better support students who are veterans?
Well, one of the things EMU did was hire me and a couple other people that are specifically oriented on working with student veterans. And one of the benefits of that, because the people in this office pretty much are all veterans, all of us but one actually. When a veteran walks into this office, I already know who they are because I lived their life, and there's an immediate connection. Anthony's another example of a guy on this campus. He has an immediate connection with people that grew up poor and don't know how to do college. And I think most universities have people like us scattered about. The tricky thing is finding that person. But I think most universities make a real good attempt to hire people like us with different backgrounds. So depending, no matter what background a student comes from, hopefully there is somebody on campus that says, I know you already, I get it. I know where you came from, and I know where you're headed, and I can help show you the path to get there.
Wonderful. And so you talked about your favorite part of your current role. Now, and you showed us the variety that can be in the armed forces, and also acknowledging that each of those paths can be quite different from the other. But in your experience, what was your favorite part of being in the armed forces?
Easily, it was working with cadets when I was an ROTC instructor. These students, they were just so high energy and wanting to learn. It was just a joy to work with them. The other interesting things about the military, I remember when I grew up in Sheboygan, my dad used to tell me, you need to get out of this town. And I used to look at the horizon wondering, what's out there? Well, I've been to Spain, France, Germany, Panama, Macedonia, Kuwait, Iraq, Kosovo, Czechoslovakia, maybe some other countries I can't remember, and all over the US. Now I know what's out there. The coolest thing about that is I look back at Michigan and I thought, this is the best place. And now I don't want to go see anything else because I know for me, this is the best place and it's awesome. But I never would have gained that appreciation without seeing the rest of the world. One of the other things the Army did for me, it is kind of painful at the same time, but I have seen poor people, and not poor people like we have in Michigan. I mean, the poorest people you can imagine in the world that don't have running water in their homes. Some of their houses didn't even have 4 walls. It may have only had 3. Just what I thought were really tough living conditions. But when I got back here to the US, every time I turn on the faucet and water comes out, I think, holy cow, I'm rich. I never felt like that before I saw the rest of the world. So that it was another gift that the military gave me, is to realize how lucky we really are, even though if you grow up here, you don't really appreciate that. But when you see the other side, you come back to this and think, wow, this is quite nice.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And how eye-opening too. Great perspective from all of that travel too. And I love what admiration you have for our roots in Michigan too. One of our attendees asked, what are some of the challenges that veterans face when returning home from service?
Oh, that's an awesome question, because it varies. And I don't mean to make the military sound scary, but I do mean to be very, very honest with you. There was a guy here named Sam who was in the Air Force, and he was an aircraft technician. And he used to joke about, he'd say, I am not even sure I really was in the military. I would just wheel out my toolbox in the morning and work on aircraft and wheel my toolbox back in at the end of the day. And that's what he did. No effect on him at all. And he's very successful now. On the opposite end of the spectrum, I knew a guy here named Ryan. Ryan was a sniper in Iraq. And one day I saw Ryan and he just looked like a mess. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, I couldn't sleep last night because I kept seeing the faces of all the people I killed. And that, it hurts. It hurts to see a person like that have to live with what they did to try and do service to their country. It really hurts me very deeply. And Ryan is going to be bothered by that the rest of his life. So like I say, the challenges, it just goes from one end of the spectrum to the other. Generally speaking, especially since we're not currently at war, it's not really too much of a shift to come back. A lot of guys, the most common thing now is, this is what I did in the Army, what can I do with it? That's one of the things I can help with a lot. You know, the guy that came in today to talk to me was a generator mechanic in the Marine Corps. Now he wants to be a teacher. And I said, you did more than you think in the Marine Corps that's going to lead you to becoming a good teacher, other than working on generators. And we put a resume together and we got done, and he said, holy cow, this looks pretty good. He's all fired up and ready to go. That's normal, but there are both ends of that spectrum.
Thank you so much for your honesty, Wayne, in presenting those different ends of the spectrum and how it can just be so different for each individual and their experiences, and then how it is when they come back. And it's awesome that you're able to help them in transferring those skills back here into, I guess, civilian life.
Right.
Would be correct? Okay. Mm-hmm. All right, well, and then our attendee says, thank you for sharing. Just wanted to share that with you in case you didn't see it in the chat, Wayne.
Glad to.
Well, as we are wrapping up, I just want to thank our featured speaker, Wayne, for sharing his time and talent with our audience today. We hope that you took copious notes. And some of the things I was taking notes during the presentation that I loved and wanted to highlight are the importance of taking initiative for your heart into what you do, refusing to quit, and then helping others and elevating those around you. Those are some of my takeaways, but thank you just again so much, Wayne. It's been a real pleasure. And I love, once again, your honesty and transparency about the armed forces and what it's like for our people who are coming back into civilian life. So we also would like to thank our audience for joining us today. Please take a moment to respond to the survey that you'll receive in about 24 hours from Zoom. And your feedback will be used for learnings and plans for the next year too. For future reference, all of our Summer Works Career Sneak Peek Speaker Series videos will be housed on the Summer Works YouTube webpage. We wish you all of the best in your future career endeavors. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good day.